What's up, everybody? Welcome to what will be a series of Coast to Coast podcasts where we're going to preview the Tar Heels basketball season for the coming year. Appreciate everybody being here. Sean Moran, Sherrell McMillan are with me as always. But what we're going to do is, I realize, look, you're like, Joey, football is getting ready to start. We don't want to hear. Okay, I get you. I got it. But we've got we're still on our every other week episode recording schedule right now. So what we're going to do is make sure we lay out time to adequately talk about the UNC roster for the coming season. And with so many new players, we're not going to be without things or people to dissect and analyze and cut up and all that good stuff. So what we want to do is start tonight by breaking down the freshmen and the sophomores. And we're always thankful that you're here. Brought to you by our friends at Johnny T-Shirt, who have been, school just got back in. I'm sure they got absolutely rocked this past weekend, but they've been by our side for a long time. So Johnny T-Shirt's going to be along with us again this season. But we want to start tonight talking about the UNC freshmen and sophomores. Who are these people? Well, if you've been living under a rock, or maybe you took the summer off and you haven't been paying attention, we're specifically talking about freshman Elliot Cadeau, who did reclass and join the Tar Heel roster. He's on campus now. Um, we've got Zayden High, who is from Compass Prep in Arizona, was a late addition to the class as well. Seth Trimble, who is already on campus, he'll be a rising sophomore, and then Jalen Washington. And if you're following the team on social media, or if you've been paying attention on the Inside Carolina message boards, you've seen that they started the team mile this week, which is the biggest conditioning thing that they have to get out of the way in order to get their season rolling. But yeah, players on campus, things are starting to get moving. So we wanted to go ahead and start previewing our players. So we'll start tonight again with the freshmen and sophomores. I'm Joey Powell. With me, as always, Sherrell McMillan, Sean Moran. This is the Coast to Coast podcast. Shout out to everybody who's joining us live. If you have not, subscribe to the YouTube page. Subscribe to however you're getting this on your podcast feed so that you get all this stuff automatically. Assuming you're a hoop head, which means if you're subscribed, you'll start getting this stuff automatically when we get back to our regular weekly schedule once the season starts. All right, here we go. Let's get rolling. Sherrell, I'm going to come to you first. We have been sitting through what seems like a really, really arduous summer, for the lack of a better term. And we have absolutely gone up and down with the transfer portal and all these different manifestations of the UNC roster. First things first, when you're looking at this group of guys, do you feel like this is what North Carolina needed when the season ended last April with no bid to the big dance?
Well, it's kind of like when you go to marriage counseling, they're like, look, this person, there's more than one person in the world for you. Like, it's kind of like,
That's a hell of a start, dude.
yeah, there's like a certain type of person who is for you. And it would be a little presumptuous to think that out of the billions and billions of people in the world, that one is the one that you're supposed to have. Maybe there's a group of 20 who kind of fit that profile. And I think that's kind of what happened with UNC. Like, there may be some other talented players that they could have gotten, or maybe there was someone else on their wish list. But I think for what they needed, there was probably 20 or 30 guys to that point who could have fulfilled kind of the unique roles that they were looking for, which was, they were looking for increased shooting. Obviously, we've talked about that ad nauseum. They were looking for higher basketball IQ. They were looking for guys who wouldn't let the ball stick. So um, I think the archetype is what they found, and that might not be quite the right word, but the composite, the archetype, the avatar, whatever word you want to use, um, I think they found what they were looking for. Guys who are experienced, again, guys who can shoot, and guys who don't let the ball stick. So from that standpoint, I don't look at the specific players as much as kind of the skill sets and the versatility that they bring. I think they did a good job. Again, we've talked about it for the last, it feels like 6.5 months. I mean, that Virginia game feels like it was so long ago.
It
It
was.
feels
It,
it
it,
feels like a
it was a long time
different.
ago.
Yeah, I just cannot believe that was in the same calendar year as this. But so I think they're in a good spot, and now it's just a matter of rounding all that into form. We talk about chemistry, we talk about all those things with the way basketball is now, transfer portal, and one and done, and all that stuff. You have 1 year with a team. You don't have 4-year teams where everybody grows together really anymore. You've got 1 year with this group of guys, and so chemistry has to be built, I guess, starting in June and building into the season.
You reminded me there how much you like to use the word avatar, and I'm glad you slipped it in. I missed that from you. Sean, I want to ask you a question, a little different twist on this. Did North Carolina successfully increase their overall team talent level? And I know that's a little bit of a, I guess, nuanced question, but specifically, you have to think about the guys that left also in consideration. We're thinking about the people who have joined the squad. So I want to ask you, is this an overall more talented North Carolina team than what they put on the court last year?
That's a really, really good question. I think from a pure name perspective, you'd have to go last year from a name perspective. I think we saw how that worked out. I think when you're looking at Ingram and Cormac Ryan, I think once again, you're not trading NBA caliber players for non-NBA. I think all these guys are still in school for a reason. They're trying to get to that level, but there's reasons they're not in the draft or they're transferring. So I think they did slightly increase the talent level, but I think to Sherrell's point, the level itself is much different in terms of the shooting and the high IQ. That it's a lot different, even though if you're playing one-on-one, perhaps the players that left, maybe are beating the guys in one-on-one situations. But I think in terms of the chemistry and the mix, I think everything bodes a lot better. But I think that question also alludes to, we've talked about grades for the team and why are they maybe not getting an A or A minus. And I think it's partly due to some of the athleticism that maybe these players coming in aren't bringing outside of Elliot Cadeau.
So what I'd like to do is we dive into the individual player aspect of things. We're going to do two things about each player. I'm going to ask what each player success looks like for each individual player. And then I want to ask what can fans count on from said player. So I'm going to hit each one of you guys with, player by player. And then back out of the show, we're going to have a little bit of fun. I usually try to save that. We'll take some questions at the very end. So if you're joining us live, make sure you save those once we get towards the back half of the show and start dropping those in. We'll take those as best we can. But yeah, we're definitely going to try to get to each player, ask those two questions for a good snapshot, and then we'll have some fun later on. So first things first, Sean, I'll come to you. We're going to start with Elliot Cadeau. What does success look like for Elliot Cadeau this year within the Tar Heel roster?
Success looks like Elliot Cadeau in the starting lineup. You'll see the assist to field goals made skyrocket. One of the key stats we talked about last year. I think you'll see the transition ability of the team improve tremendously, and I think you'll see higher 3-point percentages across a lot of the transfers and even potentially RJ Davis because they're getting better shots. I think there is a high ceiling with Cadeau in terms of that passing ability and athleticism that he does bring. Obviously, he could be also going into his senior year in high school. So there I think, should be an adjustment period, as well as what's he going to do from the 3-point line. This past season in both AAU play and high school play at the highest level, he shot 36% on 132 3-pointers. So pretty good percentage. But you look a few years back and RJ Davis came in, taking a much more higher volume, shooting almost 43% in AAU play, and he dropped down to 32% as a freshman. So if he can stay in kind of the 32 to 34%, anything above that is fantastic. But if you could stay in that range and I think all the other attributes that we know he should be able to bring from the passing and getting guys involved, I think that's what success will look like, in my opinion.
Good, concise, well-rounded answer, sir. That was as if you've been coached right out of a journalism school. Sherrell, I'm going to ask you, what can fans count on from Elliot Cadeau this year?
Yeah, Sean has called him a savant passer. I think Adam Fink and Bossy and all those guys have raved about his passing for years now. So I think above all else, if nothing else is going, if his jump shot isn't working, If he's not able to get to the rim and finish himself, he's always going to be able to find teammates. And I think that is his number one quality. And that's why a lot of people want to play with him. We asked him that actually, I think it was in April. And he was like, because I would much rather, dish it off for a dunk for them than me take a layup. And just that kind of attitude, it is selfless in a way. I think that is one of those things that can permeate a locker room when everybody starts passing and sharing the ball. That kind of stuff is infectious. How many times on this podcast did we talk about Brady Manick and when he started moving the ball and it wasn't sticking, how that changed the energy for UNC's team. I think having that in the backcourt, again, to Sean's point, is going to help a ton for RJ Davis and just pushing opportunities up tempo, and then finding guys kind of where they like the ball. That's something that's very underrated. Is yeah, you might have a wide open shot, but if the pass is low or it's at your knees or it's a little bit too high, that can change the mechanics and change your rhythm. But if it's in your sweet spot, and that's where developing chemistry comes in, if it's in your sweet spot, and I think it's a higher chance that you make it because you're comfortable and it goes in with all those reps that you took from the summer and all that muscle memory stuff. So, yeah, above all, is his passing is going to be there every game.
Sherrell, I'm going to stay here with you, and we'll move on to Zayden High. Again, his recruitment was weird in the sense that he had that really awesome spring. Kind of, UNC had some other targets or whatever, and then they got back in, and the marriage happened. Zayden High right back in with the Tar Heels. Now he's on campus. Even rocked a Compass Prep T-shirt and some UNC social media photos yesterday, which I think is hilarious. But I want to ask you, what does success look like for Zayden High this year? Because I think he has been forgotten in a sense of when the timing of his commitment with regard to also other players coming in and just the overall continuum of when the roster change happened. I think Zayden High is a little bit of a forgotten guy. So I want to ask you, what does success look like for him this year?
So I'll do a recap of his recruitment real quick for maybe those who haven't listened. But essentially, UNC had a power forward committed in 2023, which was Gigi Jackson. The weekend before he committed, UNC watched Zayden High. It was probably the best highest played maybe in his high school career. He was phenomenal, and so UNC showed interest. Obviously, when Jackson committed, they didn't have any more interest because that spot was full. Fast forward 4 or 5 months later, Jackson decommits. They called two people immediately, TJ Power, who ultimately committed to Duke, and Zayden High. UNC gets back in with High. He has an official visit scheduled. We think he's not going to make it because of a hurricane, but he does make it. He enjoys the official visit. He commits soon thereafter. So that's kind of how his recruitment went. As far as what to expect this year, I think success for him looks like just taking advantage of your opportunities, because I think the way UNC is structured, and I'm sure this will be a conversation for later, but we only have the 2 years of Hubert Davis to go by. And right now, if you're not one of those major, top rotation guys, you're not going to get a ton of playing time. That could change this year, but we're just judging by what we've seen. So for him, it'll be much like Jalen Washington last year against UVA, Seth Trimble for a couple of games when Nance was out. When you get that opportunity, you have to seize upon it. So if he has those 2 or 3 games, if he can win North Carolina a game just by, grabbing a couple of rebounds and getting a putback, I think that's a successful season as he builds his body and gets used to playing kind of against bigger grown men in the ACC. If he can do that, I think that's a successful season and would really have him primed to be a contributor should he stay as a sophomore.
Sean, I want to ask you, with regard to Zayden High, what do you think fans can count on from him for the coming season?
The main thing will be offensive rebounding in terms of when he does get in the game, what he's going to be able to do. He was really aggressive in EYBL as well as the high school season, whether he's in the paint going after offensive rebound or if he's stationed on the perimeter, he will go attack the glass. And I think that is not really something that can be taught in all situations. So I think he has that aggressiveness in him. We know Carolina's history in general and Armando in terms of how well he's done. So I think offensive rebounding and to an extent defensive rebounding will be what you can count on. In terms of what I say one other skill set. I don't think you can count on it because you look at his 3-point shooting numbers from AAU and high school, and they're pretty poor. But I think we've talked a lot about the types of shots he was taking in these situations. A lot of them were deep NBA threes. So I wouldn't expect him to come in and just be a 3-point bomber, but I would expect him, if he can take the right shots, that he should be able to show some proficiency from the outside, but not something. I think offensive rebounding is something you can put in a box and say, hey, if he's in the game for 2 minutes, 5 minutes, he's gonna attack. Shooting would be something secondarily to look out for.
All right. Sean, I'm going to stay here. We're moving on to the sophomores now. Seth Trimble. I think Seth Trimble was a guy that excited folks last year in limited minutes. And then, don't know if it was dealing with some nagging injuries or just the change in playing time or the inability to have some regular playing time to count on. But it looks like he lost a little bit of his confidence in his shooting stroke. And from what we've been able to tell, it seems like that shooting stroke has been rebuilt in the offseason. But I want to ask you, what a success look like for Seth Trimble as we head into the season?
I think success for him. I think you hit it on the head that his confidence was shot, and that really took away a lot of his offensive game. I think you can probably count on one hand the number of times we saw him go to one of his go-to high school moves, which is a left-handed pull-up jumper from 12 to 15 feet. Even there are some situations he did get to that spot, but he was probably overthinking and he wanted to either pump fake or try to wait for the defender to go by him, resulting in a block shot, bad shot, or turnover. So I think for him, success is going to look like not thinking, just playing. He didn't have any dunks last year. He's a high flyer. He wanted to get out in transition and showcase that. But more often than not, he would get into the paint and try to force it or not really know what to do. So I think this season, if he can play a little more freely, he's teams are still going to dare him to shoot it. So he's going to have to showcase, that he can take more than 6 threes and make more than one on the season. But I think if he can attack, he went a stretch from early December to mid January where he was getting high teens, close to 20 minutes per game. But it's really that UVA game at UVA that I think that's when the bottom kind of dropped out. So if he can provide solid defense, obviously it's going to be a little challenging with RJ and Elliott there, but he can be a very solid on-ball defender. He can run the floor well in terms of getting out in transition, and if he can just I'd say be serviceable from an offensive standpoint, I think we can start to see what a lot of us expected to see as a freshman.
Yeah, and I went on record last year saying that, I thought he was absolutely going to baptize somebody because he is a bit of an elevator, does have the ability to get out in transition, and it was shocking to see him struggle or just not even get a lot of opportunities at that. Sherrell, what can fans count on from a revamped shot owner, Seth Trimble, for this coming season?
Oh, you know what I'm gonna say because I say it every time about this. You can count on him bothering opposing guards. He has the size, the athleticism, and frankly, the mindset to kind of be one of you and Tommy's favorite things on defense, which is a dog. A dog. He can bark at people. Now he has all the things that you want in a really good defender. And I think you talk about kind of letting the defense flow into his offense. I think if he's in the game and he's able to get up in guys and really bother them, I think that'll help with his aggression on the offensive end. Because to me, and maybe it's kind of the same thing, saying lack of confidence, lack of aggression. But I think it was more a lack of aggression. There were times when you were like, man, Seth, you could really go by this guy and just lay it over him, or you really probably could dunk on him if you wanted to. So I think part of it is mindset, and that's very much related to confidence. But if he gets some wins on the defensive end, I think that'll fuel the offense. So definitely defense, I think, is what you can count on every game, and especially with UNC potentially having a smaller-ish backcourt than it's had in the past. They're really going to need him to guard some wings, to guard some bigger point guards. So there's going to be a role for him. So I go back to defense.
I think that will be really interesting to watch how he morphs not only within the game but from game to game on whether or not he's asked to be a defensive stopper of sorts, kind of that harasser that really can disrupt what the other team's lead guard wants to do, or if UNC actually leans on him for some offense once in a while. All right, Sherrell, I'm going to stay with you. Last one of this preview for tonight, anyway. Jalen Washington. We saw him still trying to get over his second catastrophic knee injury of his high school career, and just the machinations of what that took to finally get back, and whether he ever really did get back. So I'm going to ask you, for Jalen Washington, what does success look like for the coming season?
I think for him, is really being the first big off the bench. If he can become that, if he can become a reliable backup to Baycott, or even a reliable backup to whoever starts at the four, just be the first man off the bench, basically from the post. If he can do that, I think that's a successful season. To your point, the surgery he had, I think, was 2 years ago in late September. So he's 23 months removed from his second major knee surgery, and I think if you talk to people, they always say it's not the year you come back from the ACL, it's the year after you come back from the ACL injury.
Mm.
And his injury was worse than the ACL. So I would think he's probably pretty close to 100% for the first time in 3 or 4 years. And Heber Davis, I mean, we saw even when he was hurt, he's got a feathery touch offensively.
Mm-hmm.
He hasn't quite hit threes in games yet. I think that's coming. I think he has the ability to do it. It looks good. It just hasn't gone in. So, yeah, between those two things and blocking shots, I think if he can do those two things, he has a chance to be the first big off the bench. And for me, and I think for him, that would be a very successful season. And again, with everyone else, as long as he stays, that sets him up to be primed for a really big year as a junior.
I might be reaching here a little bit. Do you think that confidence could affect his play as significantly as it probably could somebody like Seth Trimble? Because again, I think we saw Trimble struggling with confidence. I think Washington probably struggled with confidence, and this is my assumption here. I think Washington may have struggled with confidence the whole season, as in he never really felt confident in his health. Do you think that might kind of potentially lead to a as I guess as important or as pivotal of a season based on confidence for him as it would for Trimble?
I think it could, but with him, man, he's been through so much that I think he's just happy to have the chance to actually play and be healthy. So yes, every player. I mean, even the most boisterous guys who do everything on the court, they all have crisis in confidence every once in a while. So I don't think he'll be any
Yeah,
different. But I think the
yeah.
fact that he's had to work so hard just to get back on the court, I think that'll limit it a little bit because he's you know a lot of these guys have been playing since they were 3 years old and they've never had a major injury where they had to sit out for so long. So he's had it taken away from him. So I think he probably sees it a little bit differently than some of the other guys, and he's got a little more perspective, and that would probably, in my opinion, limit how much confidence crisis he has.
All right, Sean. Last one for the individual player previews. I want to ask you, what can fans count on from Jalen Washington? Again, bit of an enigma. What can fans count on from him, in your opinion?
I think his go-to move, which from a confidence perspective, I think having a go-to move, when you're looking to hit a shot or you're looking to find that confidence, I think that's why it's going to be harder for Trimble, just because it's going to be harder for him to get it versus Washington. You throw it to him in the post, he's going to turn jab step with his right foot, try to get a little bit of space and rise up for a 12 foot jump shot, which was one of his best attributes in minimal shot attempts last year. So I think one, it's a really hard shot to guard, even if you know it's coming and you crowd him. Just given his size and his length, he can still get it off. But if you react to the jab step, then you're just giving him almost a free bucket. I think as Sherrell mentioned, he has a very good looking form on a jump shot. I don't think his legs were ready last year, even though he looked to extend that 3 point range. But I think they can count on on that shot in particular. And then I think you can count on a guy just both offensively and defensively that is a little more comfortable on the court from a speed perspective in terms of processing everything, but also defensively, I think is where hopefully we can all see a big adjustment. I was shocked going through some of the stats for him, and he only had one recorded block shot last year, which to me is pretty crazy given where he's located on the defensive end, his length, and his shot blocking tendencies. So I think that just goes to show, um, where he was defensively and how much potential there is if he can, get his feet under him and figure out where he's needed. But once again, that go to little 10-footer is a great weapon. Hopefully, he's been able to develop a little bit more when trying to back down guys. Obviously, he's not the strongest, so he can get pushed off the block a lot. But if he can develop another move, I think that'll help him tremendously.
Go ahead, Sherrell.
And I was gonna say, Sean, we have to go back and find the video, but Sean broke down kind of his go-to move, that trailing jumper. Even with at the time, we didn't know it was a bum knee. It looked great, back in, gosh, this was COVID year, so I think this was in Birmingham, maybe in 2021, something like that. And then again at Peace Jam, it still looked good, and we didn't know that he had, all the knee injuries he had at that time, and he still was knocking it down. So that's definitely one that you can tell he's repped over and over and over again.
He's the type of guy too, at least to this untrained eye. He doesn't have to have, because of his build, he doesn't have to have a ton of lift on his shot. I think more likely it's just, can he get his feet set properly, directed properly, and spaced properly, and then let his upper body do the rest of the work, which maybe that masks some of his injury issues. Sean, go ahead.
I think just the one thing is how little experience he did get. I think it was, at least he was able to play last year. I think a lot of us thought, hey, he might not even really be able to play, but he only had 2 games playing over double digits. That UVA, that first half, that he looked like an All-American. He came back down to earth in the second half, and then the Louisville game right afterwards. But other than that, you're coming in for spot minutes. And going back to that confidence issue, I think when you don't really know what your role is and how many minutes you're going to get, it can put a lot of pressure on that anytime you touch the ball, trying to make something happen. So I think, if he's had the spring and summer to get his body right and just get, I think we can see that top 25, top 30 guy that he was before the injuries. So really excited to see how he turns out this year. But I think with both him and Trimble, it's not that Caleb Love and RJ Davis freshman to sophomore year leap, given how much they played as freshmen versus how little these two played.
I think one of the things, depending on which leadership philosophy you follow or which coaching philosophy you follow, one of the things that can easily build confidence is stability. And I can't think of anything that has more stability with regard to UNC basketball than Johnny T-shirt's gear, right? If you think about the fact that they've been there since the early '80s on East Franklin Street in Chapel Hill, right there at the edge of campus, that's stability in a nutshell. And you've got stability within the 4 walls of that store if you drop in and see them. Inside Carolina Premium subscribers know you get that extra 10% off the top, which will help you build some buying confidence. If you were looking to build confidence there, you can know that you're getting the best selection, the best number of different lines of clothes, different brands. Again, football season is 2 weeks from this. No, it's 1 week from this week. Holy crap. Go get your football gear now. If you order it now, I assure you they can get it to you in time. It ships locally owned, alumni owned and operated. Johnny T-shirt are great folks. They support this and all the other great shows that you're used to hearing from Inside Carolina. If you're watching this on YouTube right now, you won't hear a break. But if you're listening to us, just hang on 1 second. We're going to let some national guys run some ads. But we are talking about previewing the freshmen and sophomores for UNC basketball right here on the Coast to Coast podcast on InsideCarolina.com. All right, guys. I've been spending a lot of time with my preteen daughter lately. And what I have learned is that the show has gotten quite chuggy. And so what we're going to do, we're going to play a little game that I like to call No Cap or Sus. Right? So what I'm getting ready to do is I'm going to first off, the show, the listening audience of the show is getting ready to go like way younger. We're going to skew way younger to probably a lot more around that, like, 24, 25, or 18 to 25 range. But we're gonna stop being chuggy. We're gonna play no cap or sus. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna give you guys a stat or a projection for this coming year for one of each of the players. Okay. And I need you, Sherrell, and you, Sean, to each give me an answer of, is that no cap or is that sus? All right. We cool? Good? Thumbs up? No? You guys are laughing.
I don't think I'd ever thought I'd be uttering either the two words, but I'm ready.
Well, it's because I just invented the game, sir. This is how hip I am. This is how in tune to what the kids have and what's going on in the streets. This is what I'm up on this. All right. So, yeah, Sean, that was very chuggy what you just said there. All right. So I'm gonna read a stat and I'll let each of you respond to it, and you can say no cap or sus, and then you can respond and support your answer. All right. First things first. Elliot Cadeau will have 10 assists in a single game at any point this season. Sean, no cap or sus?
No cap.
Wow. All right. Just all in immediately. All right.
Yeah, I mean, you said one game. I think that can
Mm-hmm.
that can happen. Once again, I think he is going to bring a different dimension to UNC. The big question is how are him and RJ going to play together? But I think his talent will have him on the court. The ability to get baskets and easier baskets for people. He doesn't have a lot of the high flyers that he's going to be throwing spectacular alley oops to, but Armando can get an easy few, kick out to some shooters. So, I say no cap to the 10 assists in at least one game.
Man, you sound like a guy that says no cap all the time. No cap. Sherrell, same thing to you. Elliot Cadeau will have a 10 assist game at some point this coming season. No cap or sus?
Yeah, I'm agree with Sean. I'm gonna say no cap on that one. There will be a game at some point where, if RJ Davis is in foul trouble or, excuse me, Cadeau is just kind of feeling it. All it takes is a Cormac Ryan or a Harrison Ingram or a Jalen Withers hitting 2 or 3 threes. That's 3 assists, just real quick off of a break or something, and then you've got 6 or 7 more to go from there. So I don't think it'll be too hard for him. I have some assist numbers that I want to talk about later, but I think 10 is firmly within reach because, frankly, it would be neat for UNC, I guess, because it hasn't happened recently. I think Joel Berry, no, RJ Davis against Baylor is the last person to have 10 or more assists, and before that, I think it was
that game had so many gaudy stats, though. Like if
Yeah.
you think about just how wonky that game was, there was a lot of real, aberrant stats there. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think it goes Kendall Marshall, Theo Pinson, RJ Davis. So I think it's happened twice since Kendall Marshall left, and Kendall Marshall's been gone for 11 years now. So it's definitely something that UNC hasn't had, that primary guard who's also a distributor. So we'll see. But I have some assist numbers later I want to talk about too.
No, go ahead.
Yeah. So to that point, I was looking up. So for me, the number for Cadeau is 5 assists. I think 5 assists is, if he's there, that means guys are making their shots. That means he's got the ball in his hands a good amount. It might seem a little low, but we're gonna play a little game. I guess we can call it no cap or sus, or we'll
No
see what
cap or
you
sus.
say.
That's look. My goal is to have Bauman like set us up some graphics and a cool intro music and all this stuff because we're going to use this for the rest of the preview shows to the point that
Okay.
I'm hoping our audience is like queued up and waiting for it next time. Now it's time for no cap or sus, right? Like I really want that to happen. But go ahead, Trill.
No, only 8 guys have averaged 5 assists per season or in a single season at UNC in the last 30 years. And it seems like that should be higher. But we start going down the list and looking, it's really the point guards you would think of and Theo Pinson. So I think that's something that really needs to change for UNC. That's the number I'm looking at, and I think Cadeau can get there. And if he gets to 5 or 6 a game, I think Carolina has a chance to really be good. The record for assist average for a freshman is Ed Cota. He had 6.8. And then the top 5, you go down to Phil Ford, who had 5.19 at number 5. So if he can be kind of in between Phil Ford at 5.1 and Kendall Marshall at 6.2, I think that's a good sign for UNC.
I like that, and I think Yeah, I just thinking back to like what guys have had in the league recently. I always feel like if you're up around like 4 or 5, you're doing pretty good with respect to the league leaders. But I'm saying that without having last year's league leaders in front of me. All right. Next question as we continue with our inaugural game of no cap or sus. Zayden High. And the thing I want you to weigh in on this, so sure I'll let you go first this time. Will Zayden High get a double figure points game at least once this season? No cap or sus?
Yeah, I'm gonna go sus on that one. Because I think the reason, like, we're comparing him to Jalen Washington a little bit from last year. The reason it happened was because Armando Bacot was hurt and Pete Nance was hurt. This year, I think if Armando Bacot were to have an injury, you have James Okonkwo back there too, and then you also have Withers, who, while it might not be his best position, has played some five at the ACC level. So I think you're looking at potentially, 2 to 3 guys ahead of High in Okonkwo, Bacot, and Withers, and I think that's probably for both the 5 and the 4 positions potentially. And then you start adding Harrison Ingram in, just because UNC has so much versatility. I think it's just going to be hard for him to get minutes, and if it's hard for you to get minutes, then it's probably going to be hard for you to score in double figures.
Yeah,
That's not
the
that's
minute.
nothing against him. I just think,
No.
there's better players in front of him. That's not disrespect to him.
Well, and if anything, we've seen Hubert Davis's edge and his past willingness or unwillingness to use his bench. Sean, same thing. No cap or sus on Zayden High getting a double figure points game at some point this season.
I would like to disagree with Sherrell and say he will, but I fully agree with the rationale for why. I mean, if he were, you could see it if there were to be a blow game and he gets 2 threes and gets to the line, but he struggled to do that a lot in the high school season with a talented team. And I think he won't have the playing time most likely to be able to do that. So we'll say sus on that one. Although I could, once again, it could happen, but I don't see it, especially given where he will probably rank with a lot of talented players around him.
All right, moving on to Seth Trimble. No cap or sus? Sean, Seth Trimble will make more than 23 pointers this coming season. And for reference, I took a look. I think Leaky Black had 20 something last year. As you mentioned earlier, Trimble went 1 out of 6. Again, assuming that he gets some more playing time and recognizing that he's essentially restructured and rebuilt what his form on his shot looks like. I'm throwing it out there. Seth Trimble will make more than 23 pointers this coming year. No cap or sus?
Sus on that one. I don't think you're going to go from 1 to 20. I think if he can, if he can, I don't know what the number is, but I don't think he's gonna make over 20. But if he can just have defenses at least consider him a threat to make an outside shot, I think that will open the lane and open things up for him. But even with a retooled shot, I think more importantly, if he can get into the lane and get to the line, if he can improve on his free throw shooting, which I believe was below 60% this year, if he can do that, that to me would be more important than hitting 23s. But you never know, especially if teams are daring and leaving him open. But I think that would be an under on that one.
Yeah, I do think his free throw shooting last year was in the 50 or 50 to 55% range, and it hovered around there most of the season, which is rare for a guy of his ability. And for those of you that are listening to it or watching us live, I'm going to go ahead and throw this out here. No cap is what the kids say nowadays, which means for sure or definitely or good, right? Sus means something is suspect or kind of iffy, not really sure about it. Okay. So for those of you who are following us, that's why we're playing no cap or sus. Sherrell, same thing. Seth Trimble will make more than 23 pointers this coming season. You going no cap? Or are you saying it's a little sus?
I gotta say, when we did our little production meeting this morning, I did not imagine it going this way. So props to Joey. That's funny. I'm gonna agree with Sean. I'll probably say a little sus, and kind of for the same reasoning as Zayden High. He's gonna have really good players in front of him, and that's not going to be what he's really asked to do. A big thing with any great team is role definition and understanding kind of who you are, what your anchor to the roster is. And I think that's not necessarily his right now. Not to say it can't become it, but that's not what it is right now. And I was looking back, I was trying to find someone who made a 3 or a 2 as a freshman. And just so happens Kenny Williams, who came out of high school as like that was his thing, was taking charges and hitting threes. He had 1 3 his freshman year, and his sophomore year he had 27. But again, for Kenny Williams, like he was known as a shooter, and he only went from 1 to 27. Now, he did miss some time that
Yeah.
year. He got hurt, so that's part of it. But I think 1 to 20 is a big ask, considering he's likely probably not going to start, and that's just not going to be what his role is when you have Cormac Ryan and Jalen Withers and Harrison Ingram and RJ Davis out on the perimeter. So that's why I'll say probably less than 20.
All right, fair enough. All right, last one, last round. I know you guys are hating that we're going to finish up for this show with this particular one, but last round of no cap or sus. Sherrell McMillan, I will ask you. Jalen Washington will average over 12 minutes per game. Are you going no cap? Or are you saying that might be sus?
Oh, that's no cap. I think he'll get there. I think they like him. I think they want him to succeed. I think he's had enough time now where, like we mentioned, he's almost 2 years removed from the surgery. This is his second off season in kind of a UNC conditioning program. There aren't any restrictions, and I think at some point your natural talent takes over. And I think we all know he's had a ton of natural talent, just hasn't been able to come out because of the injury. So I'll definitely say he'll have over 12 minutes a game. That if he didn't, that'd be really surprising. And I'd almost wonder if there had been an injury or something if he doesn't get 12 minutes a game.
That's pretty strong words there. And we did have a couple folks in the chat earlier, asking what kind of minutes per game we thought they would have. So hopefully this leading a little bit towards that. All right, Sean, last one on our last line. Do you think Jalen Washington will average over 12 minutes per game this coming season? No cap or sus?
No cap. Agree with Sherrell again on this one. So I think we're fully aligned on the questions. I had written down 16 to 18 minutes in terms of kind of a not a if he's playing really well, but I think a standard 16 to 18 I think is hopefully what they can get out of him this year, given Armando in the front court, some of the other players they brought in, and hopefully him staying injury free. I think if it's closer to the 12, who knows if we're seeing him again for a third season. So hopefully the 16 to 18 plus could be a number that we're looking at.
Well, thank you guys for humoring me a little bit during that. Now you've got a chance to prepare when we get to the later shows as we continue our previews, player previews as we move on to the end of the summer. And before we know it, it is going to be time for late night with Hubert, or whatever we're calling it. What do we call it last year? I don't even remember. Whatever the inaugural live action. That's right.
Carolina basketball.
Because they went straight from his on-court quote during the national championship game. So yeah, live action with Huber will be here before we know it. And as I mentioned, football is 10 days away, and then you get those magical weekends where you got live football and live basketball and all kinds of live action. So it should absolutely be right upon us before now. So appreciate everybody listening and sticking around tonight. I didn't see any questions in the chat, so we'll go ahead and wrap the show. Honestly, I mean, this was fun. We've got freshmen, sophomores in the bag. Next, we will talk about the juniors, and we'll get to the seniors, and we'll deal with the transfers too. So if you're listening, you know what to expect with the next couple of shows. We'll try to break things down similar to what we did, as far as what can be expected for success, what can we expect, the players to provide to the team. And, again, just really enjoy talking this with Sherrell and Sean here on InsideCarolina.com. Thanks to everybody who participated with the show tonight live on YouTube. If you haven't, please, again, subscribe, rate, review us if you'd like to. I know some folks may or may not have liked the no cap or sus game. We hope you'll learn to love it, because not everybody liked The Price is Right the first time it came on, but I'm telling you, this is the next big thing. But for Sherrell McMillan, for Sean Moran, shout out to John Siegley and John Bauman for producing, to Johnny T-Shirt, all of the Johns, for sponsoring the show. We appreciate everybody for being a part of this. We will catch you next time on the next episode of the Coast to Coast podcast here on InsideCarolina.com. I'm Joey Powell. We'll talk to you soon.